Picture this, an endless plain, grass bending under relentless wind, the sun bleeding colours across a sky that has no words to describe it yet. Because language hasn't been invented, you're surrounded by others, eyes locked on the horizon, scanning, listening, waiting. No walls, no roof, no door between you and the darkness. And something out there, it's watching back. This is where humanity's greatest invention begins, not with skyscrapers or monuments, but with a single, desperate question. What if we didn't have to live like this? Welcome to Midnight Sapien. I'm taking you 1 million years into the past to uncover how our ancestors invented something so revolutionary, so fundamental, that without it, civilization itself would never exist. Shelter. But here's the twist. The first shelters weren't designed by architects. They were built by creatures still figuring out what it meant to be human. And in building these simple structures, they didn't just protect their bodies, they built their minds. Before we dive in, if you love stories that dig deep into human history, hit subscribe and drop a comment. Where are you right now? What time is it in your world? It's powerful knowing we're all gathered here, across continents and time zones, around the same ancient fire. Timestamps are below if you drift off. That's exactly what this is for. Now, let's step backward in time. Let's walk into a world where the sky was everything, and humanity was just beginning to dream of something smaller. Chapter 1. The night before, wolves picture Africa 1 million years ago. A figure crouches in tall grass, knees pulled tight against chest. The air smells of approaching rain. In the distance, thunder rumbles like a warning. This is Homo erectus, not quite modern human, not ape either, something in between. Walking upright, yes. Using stone tools, definitely. But their nights were terror, because when darkness fell, everything changed. The predators who dozed through daylight now opened their eyes. Lions, hyenas, ancient cats with teeth like daggers. They moved through grass without sound, their eyes catching moonlight like small flames. And Homo erectus had nowhere to hide. Think about that for a moment. Really let it sink in. Every single night of your life you lie down knowing you might not wake up. No walls around you, no locked door, just your own fragile skin and the hope that whatever is out there chooses someone else. How long could you survive like that? Here's the controversial question archaeologists still debate. Did fear make us smarter, or did intelligence make us more afraid? Because something remarkable started happening. These early humans began making choices about where they slept. Not random choices, deliberate ones. They noticed things. This tree offers more cover than that one. This rock stays warm after sunset. That depression in the ground protects from wind. This spot near the river, too dangerous. Crocodiles. These observations seem simple, but they're actually revolutionary, because every choice about space is a prediction about the future. And prediction, that's where imagination lives. A mother realized, if I sleep here beneath this overhang, my baby stays drier when it rains. A child discovered, if I press close to this boulder, I'm warmer when I wake. An elder learned, if we sleep in a circle, the predators have fewer angles of attack. These weren't accidents. They were the first blueprints, not drawn on paper, but written in survival. And slowly, over thousands of years, something changed inside the human brain. The prefrontal cortex began talking to the limbic system. Planning began dancing with emotion. Logic started holding hands with instinct. In scientific terms, our ancestors developed what researchers call spatial cognition mapping. the ability to remember not just where, but why. But here's what fascinates me most. Shelter didn't begin with construction. It began with attention. The simple act of noticing which spaces felt safer created a mental architecture before any physical one existed. In their minds, they were already building. Have you ever walked into a room and immediately felt uncomfortable? Or stood in a forest clearing and felt inexplicably at peace? That's not mystical. That's ancient neural circuitry, the same systems your ancestors used to choose sleeping spots 1 million years ago. Still firing, still protecting you. Now here's something that'll keep you thinking as you drift towards sleep. What if the reason we feel anxious in open spaces or safe in small, cozy rooms isn't cultural? What if it's evolutionary memory? Millions of years of nights spent vulnerable, compressed into the architecture of your nervous system. Your fear of the dark isn't irrational, it's inherited wisdom. But here's the beautiful part. Our ancestors didn't let that fear freeze them. They transformed it into curiosity. What if we placed branches this way? What if we piled stones here? What if we made fire not just for cooking, but for keeping the darkness back? Each question was a spark, and from those sparks shelter began to glow. By the way, if this story's making you think differently about the walls around you right now, go ahead and hit that like button. It helps others find this journey too. The question I want you to carry into the next chapter is this. When did the first human look at empty space and see possibility instead of danger? Because that shift, that tiny revolution in perspective, changed everything. Coming up next, we're going to discover fire's secret role, not as warmth or light, but as humanity's first architect, the force that taught us something profound. You don't build walls to keep the world out, you build them to hold something in. Chapter 2, When Fire Changed Everything. Let's talk about the most important partnership in human history. It wasn't between man and woman. It wasn't between parent and child. It was between human and flame. Somewhere around 1 million years ago, possibly longer, Homo erectus figured out something that would echo through eternity. Fire could be controlled. Not just found after lightning struck a tree, not just carried briefly and lost, but actually made, controlled, kept alive. And this changed shelter forever. Here's why. Before fire, early humans had to keep moving. Stay in one place too long, and predators learned your patterns. Resources depleted. Danger accumulated. But fire rewrote the rules. Suddenly a simple ring of stones became a fortress. Not because of the stones, but because of what flickered between them. Light that predators feared. Warmth that made cold nights survivable. Smoke that kept insects away. Fire created the first invisible walls. Think about that image. A small group huddled around flames in complete darkness. The circle of light may be 15 feet across. Beyond it, nothing but shadow and sound. Inside the circle, safety, warmth, family. Outside, everything else. That contrast created something humans had never experienced before. Interior space. The concept of inside versus outside. And here's where it gets fascinating. Archaeologists excavating sites from this era keep finding the same pattern repeated across continents. Africa, Europe, Asia. Everywhere early humans gathered, they arranged stones in circles around hearths. Not triangles, not squares. Circles. Why? Some researchers believe it's purely practical. Circles maximize heat distribution. Everyone gets equal warmth. There are no corners for cold wind to trap. But others argue something deeper. The circle mirrors natural forms. The sun, the moon, the horizon itself. Our eyes are drawn to circular patterns. Our brains process them as safe, complete, whole. Here's the controversial part that scientists still debate. Did the circle teach us equality, or did our social nature make us prefer circles? Did the shape create the behaviour, or did the behaviour create the shape? I'll let you think about that. What we know for certain is this. Around those first fires, something profound happened. For the first time in human history, people could stay still after dark. They didn't have to sleep immediately or stay silent. The fire kept watch. And in that space, something emerged that may be more important than shelter itself. Story. Imagine the scene. Flame crackling, shadows dancing on faces. A child asks, "What was that sound?" An elder responds, "That's the hyena, but don't worry, it fears the fire." The child, "Why?" And there it is, the first why, the beginning of explanation, the birth of narrative. Fire didn't just protect bodies, it created the conditions for language to grow complex, for knowledge to be passed down, for culture to begin. If you're finding yourself captivated by how these small moments created civilization, consider subscribing. These stories take weeks to research and craft. Your support makes them possible. Now here's something that'll surprise you. The first hearths weren't just functional, they were beautiful. At Gesher Beno Yaakov in Israel, archaeologists found 790,000-year-old hearths with stones arranged in aesthetically pleasing patterns, not random, deliberately organized. Why would people struggling to survive care about how their fire pit looked? Because even then, even in the hardest times, humans needed more than survival. They needed meaning, beauty, order. The hearth became the first artwork, the first architecture, the first symbol of home. And here's what moves me most. Those hearths were returned to, season after season, year after year, sometimes for generations. The same families lighting fires in the same spots where their grandparents once sat. That continuity. That's not just tradition, that's love. The fire taught them something we're still learning. Home isn't where you build walls, it's where you return. But fire had a shadow side too. It demanded attention. Someone had to feed it, protect it, keep it alive. It could spread and destroy. It could burn the very shelters it was meant to protect. Fire was dangerous, but so was the alternative. And in choosing to live with that danger, to master it and dance with it, humans crossed a threshold. They became fire keepers, guardians of warmth in a cold universe. This partnership with flame would lead to the next great revolution in shelter. Because once you have fire, you can venture into places that were previously impossible. Dark places, hidden places, places where the sun never reaches. You can enter the caves. Coming up, we're going to step into the earth itself, into caverns that our ancestors transformed into the world's first true homes, places where they didn't just survive, they dreamed, they painted, they became fully human. But here's the question I'll leave you with. If fire created interior space by pushing back the darkness, what did the cave create by surrounding humans with stone? The answer might be the beginning of the human mind as we know it. Chapter 3. The Cave That Remembered. The first time a human walked deep into a cave, something changed forever, not just in the world, inside the human mind itself. Let me paint you a picture. You're standing at the mouth of a limestone cave in what will one day be called South Africa. It's 2 million years ago. The opening yawns before you like a great stone mouth. Inside, absolute darkness. Every instinct screams, "Don't enter." Predators use caves, bears, lions, snakes coiled in the cool shadows. The darkness inside isn't empty, it's alive with possibility, and most of that possibility involves teeth. But you're cold, hungry, the storm outside is growing worse, and something, maybe desperation, maybe curiosity, pushes you forward. You take a torch, a branch wrapped in animal fat burning bright, and you step inside. The change is immediate. The wind stops. Rain becomes a distant memory. The temperature shifts. Not warm exactly, but stable, constant. You move deeper. The light from outside fades. Now there's only your torch, throwing wild shadows on walls that seem to breathe. And then you realize something astonishing. The predators that terrified you outside, they're not here. The cave is empty. This is Wonderwork Cave, and archaeological evidence suggests Homo erectus lived here not for a night, but for seasons, possibly years. They didn't just shelter in the cave's mouth, they went deep. They made fires in the darkness. They brought their children. They painted symbols on the walls. They made the cave home. Here's what fascinates scientists. Why? Caves are dangerous. You can get lost. The air can be bad. Water drips constantly. There's no light. The psychology of being surrounded by stone should be crushing. But instead, something opposite happened. Early humans didn't feel crushed. They felt held. The cave became more than shelter. It became a womb, a return to enclosure, a memory of safety that existed before birth. Modern neuroscience has discovered something remarkable. Our brains have specific neural circuits that respond to enclosed spaces. These circuits release calming neurochemicals when we're surrounded by structure. It's called the Denning instinct, and it's why even today, children build pillow forts. Why we love reading nooks and breakfast nooks and cozy coffee shops with high backs on the booths. We're not seeking to hide, we're seeking to be held. The cave offered something the open savanna never could: predictability. Outside, danger could come from any direction. The horizon stretched forever, and your eyes had to scan constantly. Your nervous system never rested. But inside the cave, there was only one entrance, one direction to watch. For the first time in evolutionary history, humans could truly relax. And when the mind relaxes, when attention isn't consumed by survival, something magical happens. Imagination wakes up. In Wonderwork Cave, archaeologists found something that still gives me chills. Layers of ash, yes. Tools, yes. But also this: ochre, red iron oxide, ground into powder. They weren't using it for tools, they were using it for colour. This is one of the earliest evidences of symbolic thought, of art, of humans looking at the world and wanting to make it more than it was. Why would people struggling to survive care about red pigment? Here's the controversial theory that some scientists propose. The cave didn't just protect the body, it protected something emerging, something fragile and precious, consciousness itself. The cave created the conditions for self-awareness, for reflection, for the internal voice we call me. Think about it. For the first time, humans could sit still in silence without danger. They could think, remember, plan, dream. The darkness surrounding them created a mirror, and in that mirror they saw themselves. If this idea is sparking something in you, if you're feeling the weight and wonder of this moment, that like button helps this story reach others who might need it tonight. But caves had another gift, one that would echo through human culture forever: acoustics. Inside a cave, sound behaves differently. Voices echo, rhythms reverberate. The human voice gains power and presence. Did they sing in the caves? We'll never know for certain. but archaeologists have discovered that many painted caves have remarkable acoustic properties. The places where the art is most concentrated, those spots have the most dramatic echoes. What if the first music, the first deliberately created sound beyond communication, was born in cave darkness? A voice calling out and hearing itself answered by stone, the first duet between human and earth. But life in caves wasn't all transcendence and art. It was still hard. Cold stone floors, dripping water, smoke from fires with nowhere to escape, and yet they stayed. Generation after generation returning to the same caves. Wonderwork, Blombos, Lascaux, Chauvet. These weren't just shelters, they were sacred spaces, ancestral homes, places where the boundary between the living and the dead grew thin. Here's what we found in many caves: deliberate burials, bodies placed with care, sometimes covered with ochre, sometimes with tools or ornaments. They brought their dead into the cave, into the earth. It's as if they understood something we're only beginning to remember. The cave wasn't just a shelter from the storm, it was a portal, a threshold, a place where transformation happened. You entered the cave afraid. You emerged changed. Coming up next, we're going to journey to the frozen edges of the world, to places where no caves existed, where no trees grew, where survival required something most people thought impossible. Building homes from death itself. But the question I want you to ponder as you drift is this: if the cave taught us interiority, what did the ice teach us about endurance? Chapter 4: Bones Rising from Ice. There's a place in Ukraine where winter lasts 9 months, where temperatures drop so low that breath freezes in the air, where wind cuts through skin like glass. No caves here, no forests. Nothing but endless white plains and frozen rivers. This is where mammoths came to die, and where humans learned to build homes from bones. Imagine you're standing in that ancient tundra 25,000 years ago. You're hungry, cold. Your group is desperate for shelter, but there's nothing to build with. No wood, no stone suitable for walls, only grass, snow, and the massive skeletons of mammoths scattered across the landscape. And then someone has an idea so wild, so brilliant, that it seems like madness. What if we built our house from them? Welcome to Measuring, the site of one of the most extraordinary archaeological discoveries in human history. Here, scientists found something that shouldn't exist. Structures made entirely from mammoth bones, not small shelters, actual houses. Each one required the bones of dozens of mammoths. Jaws, skulls, femurs, ribs, tusks, all arranged in intricate patterns, locked together like massive puzzles. The circular foundations were 20 feet across, the walls curved upward, bone fitted to bone, covered with hides, weighted with stones, insulated with packed earth. Inside there was space for families, for fire, for life. These houses stood in one of the most hostile environments on Earth, and people lived in them for generations. Let that sink in. They didn't just survive the Ice Age, they thrived. Here's what makes these bone houses controversial. We don't know exactly how they got all those bones. Did they hunt mammoths specifically for construction? That would require incredible skill and bravery. Did they scavenge from natural death sites? That would require knowledge of the landscape and patience. Or did they do both, creating a culture built on respectful use of every resource? The debate continues. But here's what we know for certain. These weren't crude piles of bones. They were engineered. The weight distribution was calculated. The entrances faced away from prevailing winds. The interior layout included distinct areas for sleeping, cooking, and tool making. Whoever built these homes understood physics, even if they didn't have words for it. And here's something that gives me chills. Inside these bone circles, archaeologists found carved ivory figurines, small female forms with exaggerated features, the famous Venus figures. Why would people freezing on the edge of survival take time to carve art? Because shelter isn't just about the body. It never was. These people needed meaning as much as warmth, beauty as much as protection. The bone houses taught them something profound. The deadliest environment becomes survivable when you work together. Each house required enormous communal effort. Bones that weigh hundreds of pounds needed to be transported, positioned, secured. This wasn't the work of one family. It was the work of a community. And in that work, bonds formed, trust developed, culture crystallized. If you're moved by this image of humans cooperating against impossible odds, consider sharing this video. Someone you know might need this reminder tonight. But here's what haunts me most about these bone houses. They didn't last forever. The Ice Age ended. Mammoths went extinct. The people who built these structures migrated away, and slowly, over thousands of years, the bones collapsed back into the earth. Today, if you visit Prehistoric, you see only outlines, dark stains in the soil where bones once stood, the memory of circles. But those circles changed everything, because humans learned something they could carry forward. You can build home from anything, even from death itself. The question now becomes, what came after? When the ice retreated and grasslands expanded, what did humans build next? Coming up, we're going to discover the most persistent architectural form in human history, a shape so powerful it appears on every continent, in every culture, across every age, the circle that holds us still. But before we move forward, think about this. What does it mean that humans decorated their homes even in the hardest times? That they carved beauty into bone while ice surrounded them? Maybe the first architects weren't building houses at all. Maybe they were building hope. Chapter 5. The circle that holds us. Close your eyes and picture home. Whatever image appears, I'd bet something in it curves. Maybe it's the arch of a doorway, the round table where family gathers, the embrace of a favourite chair. We're drawn to curves, to circles, to forms without edges. And this isn't cultural, it's ancient. From the mammoth bone rings of Ukraine to the stone circles of Scotland, from the yurts of Mongolia to the round houses of Africa, from the teepees of the Great Plains to the igloos of the Arctic. Everywhere humans settled, they built circles. Why? Let's start with a practical answer. A circle is structurally efficient. It encloses maximum space with minimum materials. Wind flows around it instead of catching on corners. Heat distributes evenly from a central fire. In engineering terms, it's elegant, but here's where it gets deeper. A circle has no hierarchy, no head, no back. Everyone sitting around a circular fire is equidistant from the center, the chief and the child, the elder and the newcomer, all equal in the geometry of warmth. This spatial equality may have shaped early human social structures. Some anthropologists believe the circle taught us fairness before we had language for the concept. Here's the controversial question. Did egalitarian societies build circles, or did circles create egalitarian societies? Did the architecture shape the culture, or did the culture shape the architecture? The answer might be both. At sites across Europe, archaeologists find circular dwellings rebuilt in exactly the same spots for centuries. Same diameter, same orientation, same central hearth. Why such precise repetition? because the circle wasn't just efficient, it was sacred. In many ancient cultures, the circle represented eternity. No beginning, no end. The endless cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. The sun traces a circle across the sky. The moon cycles through phases. Seasons turn like a wheel. The circle was cosmic order made visible. And when you built your home in a circle, you weren't just constructing shelter. You were aligning yourself with the universe. Here's something that might make you think differently about your own space. Modern psychology has discovered that circular rooms reduce anxiety. People in rounded spaces report feeling calmer, more connected, more creative. Why? Because corners create visual tension. Our eyes naturally scan for threats in corners and edges. It's a survival instinct. But in a circular room, the eye flows continuously. The nervous system relaxes. We're still responding to the same neural circuits that made our ancestors feel safe in circles around the fire 100,000 years ago. If this is changing how you see the spaces around you, that subscribe button helps more people discover these insights. Let me tell you about a specific site that captures the power of the circle, Skara Brae, in the Orkney Islands of Scotland, about 5,000 years old. It's a Neolithic village preserved almost perfectly under sand, and every single house is circular. But here's what's remarkable. Inside each circle, the furniture is built from the same stone as the walls, beds, shelves, hearths, all integrated into the architecture. These homes weren't assembled, they were carved, and in the center of each house, the hearth. Always central, always circular, the entire community organized around this shape, and they thrived for generations. But circles aren't universal because they're practical. They're universal because they're emotional. Think about how humans naturally gather when something important happens. We don't stand in rows. We form circles, around a campfire, around someone in distress, around a storyteller, around a celebration. The circle pulls us together. It makes us visible to each other. It dissolves hierarchy and creates community. And this instinct goes so deep that even children do it automatically. Watch kids on a playground deciding what game to play. They'll instinctively form a circle without being told. Here's what moves me most about the endurance of the circle. In a world where everything changes, where cultures rise and fall, where technologies transform, the circle remains. We still build circular gathering spaces, amphitheatres, rotundas, round tables for important meetings. Why? Because something in us remembers. Remembers the first fires, the first shelters, the first moments when humans looked at each other across flames and recognized themselves. The circle doesn't just hold space, it holds memory. And maybe that's the real reason it endures. Not because it's efficient or beautiful or sacred, but because every time we form a circle, we're repeating a gesture as old as humanity itself. We're saying, we belong together. Coming up next, we're going to follow humans as they learn to walk with their homes, to carry shelter like breath, to build structures that vanished like mist but held life like stone. The architecture of nomads, the poetry of impermanence. But here's the question to carry with you. If permanence gives us stability, what does impermanence give us? The answer might be freedom. Chapter 6. Shelters that walked. There's a kind of home that leaves no trace. It stands for a season, then disappears. The poles return to trees, the hide returns to earth. The ground beneath shows no scar. And yet these homes carried humanity across continents, through ice ages and migrations, from Africa to Asia to the Americas. These were shelters that walked. Let me take you into this world. You're part of a small group following reindeer herds across tundra. The animals migrate with the seasons and you follow. To stop is to starve. Your entire home is bundled on your back. Poles, hides, ropes, a few essential tools. When evening comes, you know exactly what to do. You've done it 100 times. You find level ground near water but not too close. You read the wind, the stars, the slope of the land. Then you begin. Poles rise in careful arrangement. Hides stretch tight. Ropes secure everything. In less than an hour, what was nothing becomes shelter. Inside, firelight flickers, food cooks, stories flow. This is home. Tomorrow you'll take it down on the walk again. But tonight, you're held. These mobile shelters, tents and hide structures of incredible sophistication were humanity's most successful architectural form for over 50,000 years. More successful than castles, more enduring than cities. Why? Because they matched human nature itself. We're not designed to sit still. We're designed to move, to explore, to follow food and water and opportunity. The mobile shelter didn't fight that nature, it embraced it. Here's what archaeological evidence reveals. These weren't crude tarps thrown over branches, they were engineered. At sites across Eurasia, we find post holes arranged in precise patterns, circles, ovals, teepee configurations, each design optimized for different climates and purposes. In warm regions, shelters were airy, designed for shade and breeze. In cold regions, they were tight, insulated, designed to trap every bit of heat. The people who built these structures understood aerodynamics, thermodynamics, and structural engineering without having words for any of it. They learned by doing, by failing, by improving. Each generation passed down knowledge through demonstration. Watch how grandmother ties this knot. See how grandfather reads the wind before placing the door. This was architecture as inheritance. But here's what makes mobile shelters profound. When your home can be carried, place becomes fluid. You're not stuck, not trapped. If danger comes, you can move. If resources deplete, you can migrate. If conflict arises, you can choose peace and walk away. The mobile home gave humans something that settled people often lost: options. And options are a kind of freedom. If you're finding new appreciation for different ways of living, that like button helps this perspective reach others. Let me tell you about a specific culture that mastered mobile architecture. The Plains peoples of North America, the creators of the teepee. A teepee isn't just a tent, it's a marvel of design. The poles lean inward at precise angles, creating incredible structural integrity. Wind that would flatten a square tent flows around the teepee's cone shape. The hide covering can be adjusted with flaps to control ventilation. In summer, you raise the sides for breeze. In winter, you seal everything tight. The smoke hole at the top has movable flaps controlled by external poles. You can adjust them without going outside, directing smoke away from wind. Inside, there's a clear organization. The back area, furthest from the door, is the honored space. The area near the entrance is for daily tasks. Everything has its place, and everyone knows that place. This isn't random, it's culture made spatial. And here's what fascinates me. These designs weren't written down. They were held in memory and practice. A skilled teepee maker could raise a structure in darkness, by touch alone, because the pattern was internalized. The home didn't live on paper, it lived in hands. But mobile shelters had costs too. They offered no protection against determined raiders. They couldn't withstand extreme weather for months. They required constant maintenance and eventual replacement, and they held no surplus. You could only carry what you needed. For some, This was freedom, for others, limitation. Here's the controversial question scholars still debate. Did mobile peoples choose to remain nomadic, or were they forced to by lack of resources? Were they free spirits or desperate wanderers? The answer probably varies by culture, by era, by individual. But what's clear is this. For most of human history, we walked with our homes, and in that walking, we spread across the entire planet, from Africa to Australia, from Siberia to South America. The mobile shelter made human migration possible. It made adaptation possible. It made diversity possible. Without it, we'd still be huddled in East Africa. Think about that. The structure that left no trace changed everything. Coming up, we're going to slow down. We're going to watch humans make a choice that would transform civilization. The choice to stay, to build homes not from what they carried, but from what the earth offered, to shape grass and mud and reed into walls that breathed. This is where permanence begins, where agriculture takes root, where villages become towns. But the question I'll leave you with is this. When humans stopped walking, did they gain stability or lose freedom? Or did they gain both and lose both? Chapter 7. Earth and Hands. There's a moment in human history when everything pivots. It's not dramatic. No great battle, no sudden invention, just a simple choice. What if we stayed? What if instead of following the herds we encourage plants to grow? What if instead of moving with seasons we built for multiple seasons? What if we stopped being guests and became residents? This is the Neolithic Revolution, the shift from nomadic to settled life. And it required a completely new kind of shelter, one you couldn't carry, one that grew from the earth itself. Let me show you how it began. You're standing at the edge of a marsh somewhere in the Fertile Crescent, maybe 12,000 years ago. Around you, wild grains grow thick. Fish fill the shallow waters. Birds nest in the reeds. This place provides. It provides so much that leaving seems foolish. So you stay, just for a season, then another. But your old mobile shelters aren't working anymore. The constant wind off the marsh tears at hides. You need something more permanent. And that's when someone notices. The reeds all around us. The mud beneath our feet. What if we built with those? Thus begins wattle and daub construction. One of humanity's most important innovations. Here's how it works. You weave flexible branches, willow or hazel, into a lattice. This is the wattle. Then you mix clay, sand, water and organic matter, straw or dung, into a thick paste. This is the daub. You press the daub into the wattle by hand, you smooth it, shape it, let it dry. And slowly, a wall emerges. Not stone, not permanent like that, but stable enough to last years. Breathable enough to stay dry inside, thick enough to insulate, and made entirely from local materials that regenerate. This is architecture that doesn't dominate the landscape, it cooperates with it. At sites like Çatalhöyük in Turkey, we find entire towns built this way. Hundreds of houses, all wattle and daub, all connected, all occupied for generations. This isn't primitive, it's sophisticated. The walls were regularly maintained, repaired, replastered. Sometimes they were painted, sometimes decorated with symbols. Inside these homes, life took on new patterns. Storage became possible. You could keep surplus grain for lean times. You could accumulate possessions. Family structures changed. You could house multiple generations under one roof. Social hierarchies emerged. Some houses were larger, some positioned more centrally. With permanence came complexity. But here's what moves me most about wattle and daub homes. They require touch, constant, intimate touch. You can't build a wattle wall with tools alone. You must weave with your hands. You must press the daub into place with your fingers. The building itself is an act of care, and the wall remembers. Even today, when archaeologists excavate ancient daub, they find fingerprints, actual fingerprints preserved in clay. The hands of people dead 10,000 years still visible, still present. If that image touches something in you, if you feel the weight of those ancient hands, consider subscribing to this journey. But settled life wasn't all progress. With permanence came new vulnerabilities. Your home couldn't move, so if danger came, you had to fight or hide. If resources depleted, you couldn't just walk away. Diseases spread more easily in dense settlements. Conflicts over land intensified. The mobile peoples could avoid confrontation. Settled peoples had to navigate it. Here's the controversial question. Did agriculture make us more civilized or more violent? The archaeological record shows both. Settled communities developed art, trade, specialized skills. They built beauty and knowledge, but they also built walls, defenses, weapons. The same stability that allowed culture to flourish also made war more common. This paradox haunts civilization still. But let's return to the homes themselves. Wattle and daub houses taught humans something crucial. Material shapes experience. Clay walls absorb sound differently than hide. The space inside feels different, more enclosed, more separate from outside. This intensified the concept of private space, of interior life. For the first time, you could have secrets, could have thoughts that weren't shared around the fire. The walls didn't just enclose bodies, they began to enclose identities. And with that enclosure, something emerged that would define human experience going forward. The individual self, not just as part of a group, but as a separate being with internal thoughts and private experiences. The walls we built outside began building walls inside. This isn't judgment, it's observation. With individuality came incredible creativity, art, philosophy, innovation. But it also came loneliness, separation, the feeling of being apart. The question is, was it worth it? Coming up next, we're going to enter the forest. We're going to watch humans learn to work with wood, to shape timber into frames that would echo through all architecture to follow. This is where post and beam construction begins, where the straight line meets the curved space, where engineering becomes art. But here's what I want you to think about as we transition. Every material we build with changes not just our shelter, but our minds. Clay made us more stable. Wood will make us more flexible, and each material carries its own wisdom. Chapter 8. The Forest Speaks. Listen to the sound of a wind through trees, that rushing, whispering sound. It's been speaking since forests first covered the earth, and eventually humans learned to speak back, not with words, with axes, with respect, with careful selection and patient shaping. Timber construction marks another revolution in human shelter. Not because wood was new, people had used it for millennia, but because they learned to work it precisely, to join it, to frame it, to build spaces that could span wider, rise higher, and last longer than anything before. Let me take you to Mesolithic Europe, about 10,000 years ago. The glaciers have retreated. Forests explode across the landscape. Oak, ash, elm, birch, endless resources. But wood is different from every material we've discussed. It's alive. Even after cutting, it continues to move. It swells with moisture, shrinks when dry, twists, warps, splits. To build with wood, you must understand its nature, work with its grain, not against it, and humans learned, slowly, through generations of observation. They discovered oak is strong but heavy, birch is flexible, pine is light and easy to work. Each species has its purpose. They learn to fell trees in winter when sap is down, to season wood before building, to use the heartwood for structure and sapwood for detail. This knowledge wasn't written. It lived in the hands of builders, in the scars on their fingers, in the way they touched a beam and knew if it would hold. At sites like Starcar in England, we find evidence of sophisticated timber structures, post holes arranged in geometric patterns, wooden platforms built over marshy ground. These weren't random piles of logs, they were designed, and the design language they developed, posts and beams, verticals and horizontals, still forms the basis of construction today. But here's what makes timber profound. Unlike stone or brick, wood contains visible life history. You can count its rings and know how old the tree was. You can see the grain and understand what seasons it endured. Every beam is a story, and when you build with these stories, when you frame your home from the bodies of trees, you're creating something more than shelter. You're creating relationship. Traditional timber framers speak about this, how certain beams seem to fit perfectly, how the wood guides you if you listen. This isn't mysticism, it's material intelligence. Wood communicates through resistance and ease, through how it splits or refuses to, through the sound it makes under the saw, and builders who work with wood long enough develop an intuitive understanding that no manual can teach. If this idea of material wisdom resonates with you, that like button helps others find this perspective. Let me tell you about a specific timber tradition that captures this relationship. In Japan, the Jomon people built pit houses with sophisticated wooden frames dating back 14,000 years. These structures featured massive central posts, sometimes 3 feet in diameter, sunk deep into earth. The post wasn't just structural, it was ceremonial. Raising the central post marked the founding of a household. It represented the axis mundi, the world tree, the connection between earth and sky. When the house was built, the family lived around that post. It witnessed births, deaths, celebrations, grief. And when the structure eventually collapsed, the post remained longest, standing like a gravestone for a life well lived. This is architecture as memory, as testimony. But timber construction had challenges. Wood rots, insects consume it, fire destroys it instantly. Unlike stone monuments that endure millennia, wooden structures survive only through constant care or fortunate circumstances. Most timber shelters from prehistory are gone completely. We know them only through post holes, shadows in the soil, and yet wood dominated human construction for most of our settled history. Why? Because it's renewable. A forest managed well provides timber forever. Stone quarries exhaust. Because it's workable. You can shape wood with simple tools. Stone requires specialized skill, and because it's warm, literally and emotionally, a wooden home feels alive in a way stone doesn't. It creaks, it settles, it ages with you. Here's the controversial question. Did working with wood make humans more sensitive to natural processes? Some researchers believe that cultures with strong timber traditions developed different relationships with nature. More cyclical, more patient. You can't rush a tree. You can't force wood to do what it won't. You must adapt your plans to the material's reality. This teaches humility. Stone can be dominated, but wood must be befriended. And maybe that friendship shaped how timber building cultures saw the world. as something to cooperate with, not conquer. These ideas matter because they're still relevant. Today, as we reconsider our relationship with nature, with resources, with sustainability, we're rediscovering lessons timber builders knew intuitively. That the best design works with material nature, not against it. That efficiency isn't just about strength, but about appropriateness. Coming up, we're going to gather everything we've learned and ask a bigger question. What happens in the mind when shelter moves from temporary to permanent? When home shifts from action to place? This is where we discover something surprising. The first architects weren't just building structures, they were building consciousness itself. But before we go there, think about this. Every material we've explored, stone, bone, clay, wood, taught humans something different about being in the world. What is your own home teaching you? Chapter 9. What fire taught us. We need to return to fire one more time. Because everything we've explored, caves and circles, timber frames and wattle walls, none of it makes sense without understanding what happened around the hearth. Fire didn't just provide light and warmth, it created something more profound. Social space. Let me paint the scene one final time. A group gathers as darkness falls. The day's work is done. Food has been prepared. Children sit close to parents. Elders settle into their familiar spots. The fire is lit. And in that moment something shifts. Conversation begins. Not the urgent communication of hunting or gathering, but something slower, reflective. Stories emerge about the day, about the past, about people no longer here. Questions are asked. Why does the river run that way? Where do the stars go in daylight? What happens after death? Around the fire, humans began thinking beyond immediate survival. They began asking why. And in asking why, they became philosophers, scientists, artists, spiritual seekers. The hearth was humanity's first university. Here's what archaeological evidence suggests. Sites with long-term hearths show more complex tool development, more artistic expression, more evidence of symbolic thought. The correlation is clear. Stable fire equals cognitive expansion. But why? Because fire created time. Before fire, darkness meant sleep or danger. There was no in-between. But fire pushed back the night. It created hours where you could be awake and safe simultaneously. Hours to think, to create, to teach. In that extended awareness, the human mind found room to grow. Children watched elders demonstrate tool-making, not in hurried moments, but with patience and explanation. Knowledge became explicit, transferable, cultural. And culture, once it began accumulating around hearths, never stopped. Every civilization in human history has a central fire at its origin story. Prometheus stealing fire from the gods, the eternal flames in temples, the Olympic torch passed through generations. We remember even now that fire is more than utility, it's sacred. If you're feeling the depth of this connection, consider subscribing. These stories carry ancient memory forward. But here's where it gets deeper still. Fire demanded cooperation. One person couldn't maintain a fire alone indefinitely. Someone had to gather fuel. Someone had to tend it. Someone had to protect it. This required trust, division of labor, shared responsibility. The hearth created social contracts before contracts had words. I'll watch the fire while you sleep. You'll watch when I sleep. That simple agreement is the foundation of civilization. And it began around flames in the darkness, but fire also created hierarchy. In many cultures, the firekeeper became a role of importance, sometimes spiritual, sometimes political. Control of fire meant control of comfort, of food preparation, of protection. And with that control came power. Here's the controversial question. Did fire create equality or inequality? Around the fire, everyone was equal in their need for warmth. But access to fire, knowledge of fire making, privilege of sitting closest, these could be distributed unequally. The same tool that gathered communities also divided them. This paradox runs through all human technology. Every tool can unite or separate depending on how it's used. But let's focus on what fire gave us at its best. It gave us a center. In every home we've discussed, from bone houses to timber halls, the hearth was central, not just spatially but emotionally, symbolically. The hearth was where family defined itself, where identity crystallized, where belonging felt tangible. Even today, even in homes heated by invisible electricity, we still arrange furniture around a hearth. A fireplace, yes, but also a television, a table, a couch arrangement. We're still seeking center, still gathering around something. Because fire taught us that home isn't just about walls, it's about what those walls circle, it's about the light in the middle. Coming up in our final chapter, we're going to pull everything together. We're going to ask the biggest question of all. What does shelter teach us about being human? Not just about survival, but about consciousness, about art, about meaning. Because here's the beautiful secret. Our ancestors weren't just building homes, they were building the possibility of you. Every shelter was a gamble, a bet that humanity would continue, that children would grow, that knowledge would pass forward, and here you are, living proof that they were right. But before we conclude, I want you to think about this. Your home right now, wherever you are, what is it holding? Not just your body, but your dreams, your memories, your sense of self. Because if shelter shaped our ancestors' minds, it's still shaping yours. Chapter 10. The Blueprint in Our Bones. We've travelled together through 1 million years, from exposed plains to cave darkness, from ice to forest, from temporary to permanent, and now we arrive at the question that matters most. What did all this building actually build? The obvious answer: homes, structures, protection from elements. But the real answer is stranger and more beautiful. Shelter built the human mind itself. Let me explain. Every time our ancestors chose a sleeping spot, they were practicing prediction, exercising foresight, building mental models of cause and effect. Every time they stacked stones or wove branches, they were strengthening neural pathways for spatial reasoning, for pattern recognition, for abstract thought. Every time they returned to the same hearth, they were forming episodic memory, creating narrative continuity, developing a sense of self across time. The shelter didn't just protect the brain, it shaped it. Neuroscientists call this cognitive scaffolding, the idea that external structures support and shape internal mental processes. And shelter was humanity's first cognitive scaffold. It gave us concepts we couldn't have without it, inside and outside, public and private, mine and yours, past and future. These aren't natural categories, they're architectural ones, and they became fundamental to how we think. Consider the concept of home. It doesn't just mean a physical place, it means belonging, identity, safety, memory, love. All of that condensed into 4 walls and a roof. Shelter became metaphor, and metaphor became how we understand everything else. We speak of building relationships, constructing arguments, having solid foundations or walls between people. Our entire conceptual framework is architectural, because architecture was our first abstract language, before mathematics, before writing, before formal logic. We learn to think by learning to build, and here's what gives me chills. The neural circuits that light up when you arrange your living room, those same circuits fire when you organize ideas, when you structure a story, when you plan your future. Your brain doesn't distinguish between physical space and mental space. It uses the same systems for both. So every time you tidy a room, you're not just cleaning, you're practicing thought itself. Every time you imagine rearranging furniture, you're exercising the same cognitive muscles you use for problem solving and planning. Shelter didn't just protect your ancestors' bodies, it built the cognitive architecture you're using right now to understand these words. If this realization is landing with weight, that like button helps this message reach others, but there's more. Shelter also created the conditions for a culture. Permanent structures meant accumulated knowledge. You could pass down not just genetics, but information. Grandmother stored tools in that corner. That's where we keep them. These tiny inheritances, repeated thousands of times, became tradition, and tradition became culture. The house itself became a teaching tool, a three-dimensional textbook of how to live. Children learned social roles by watching who sat where around the fire. They learned gender roles by observing who performed which tasks in which spaces. They learned hierarchy by noticing whose house was central, whose peripheral. Architecture wasn't just background, it was curriculum, and this makes sense evolutionarily. Spoken language is fragile, memory fails, elders die, but a built environment persists. It holds knowledge in its very structure. The angle of a roof teaches about rain without words. The placement of a hearth teaches about smoke management. Living in shelter was learning from shelter. This is called embodied cognition, and it's revolutionizing how we understand human intelligence. We're not just brains in bodies, we're thinking systems that extend into our environments. The pencil in your hand becomes part of your thinking. The notes on your wall become part of your memory. And for our ancestors, shelter became part of their consciousness. They didn't just live in homes, they lived with homes. Through homes, the structure became an extension of self. Here's where it gets philosophical. If shelter shaped human consciousness, then changing shelter changes consciousness. Moving from mobile to settled didn't just change where people lived, it changed who they were. The nomad and the farmer don't just have different lifestyles, they have different cognitive styles, different ways of being in the world, neither better nor worse, just different. And every architectural revolution since, cities, skyscrapers, digital spaces, each one reshapes human consciousness in subtle but profound ways. We're not separate from our environments, we're continuous with them. This raises an urgent question for our time. What is our current architecture doing to our minds? Cubicles, suburban isolation, digital environments that follow us everywhere. Are these structures serving us, or are we serving them? I don't have answers, only the question. But our ancestors offer a clue. The shelters that endured longest, that felt most like home, weren't the biggest or strongest. They were the ones that held balance between inside and outside, between protection and connection, between stability and flexibility. They were structures that served life, not structures that life served. And maybe that's the wisdom we need to remember now. As we close this journey, I want to come back to where we started. That figure crouched on the open plain, exposed to wind and stars. We don't know their name, we never will, but we know they looked at empty space and imagined safety. They looked at branches and saw walls. They looked at a circle of stones and saw home. And in that act of imagination, they built more than shelter. They built the possibility of everything that came after: art and science, cities and culture, everything we call civilization. It started with one simple revolutionary act, trying to feel less alone in the universe. And you know what? It worked. Because here you are, safe, sheltered, connected through this story to every human who ever built a fire or laid a stone or wondered if tomorrow would come. You're the inheritor of 1 million years of shelter building. It's in your bones, in your brain, in your instinct to create spaces that feel like home. So the next time you walk into a room and immediately feel something, welcome or unease, comfort or tension, remember, that's not random. That's ancient wisdom. Architecture speaking directly to your evolutionary memory. Listen to it. Thank you for walking this path with me tonight. If this journey moved something in you, if it changed how you see the walls around you, consider sharing it with someone who might need this perspective. And if you'd like to continue exploring the deep human story, that subscribe button is your invitation. Where did this find you? What time is it in your world? Drop a comment. Let's build a circle here around this digital hearth. Until we meet again, may your shelter hold you gently, may your hearth stay warm, and may you remember always that home is not just where you are, it's where you return to yourself. Sleep well, fellow sapien. The stars are still watching, but the walls hold steady.